Good afternoon, everybody, including those of you who are attending this event online. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Alan Turing Institute for their invitation to take part today. I was able to attend some of the talks this afternoon, and I'm encouraged and excited by what I've heard. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with the role of Government Chief Scientific Advisor, my job is to advise the Prime Minister and the government on any matter relating to science, technology, or engineering. So that means making sure the government has science advice mechanisms that are efficient, effective, up-to-date, speak truth to power, and are embedded irreversibly in its systems, and indeed, that's the purpose of the department I head up, which is called the Government Office for Science. So I took this post almost a year ago, and it's fair to say that pretty much, well, actually from before day one, AI has been top of my inbox. I don't think this audience needs me to make the case for AI as a technology with genuinely transformative power. So instead, the argument I wanted to make to you for this keynote was twofold. So first of all, I want to make the case that we need a proper scientific approach to how we're going to deploy AI, both safely and effectively, and also that we need to take a systems approach to managing AI. So I think it's through that combination that the UK stands a good chance of seizing the opportunities, mitigating the risks, and achieving the strategic advantage that I think we can all see is available to nations that make good, proper use of this very exciting technology. So why a scientific approach? Well, I think it's because we need to use the well-established techniques of the scientific method to deal with these multiple uncertainties that come with the power and promise of AI. Fortunately, the UK has an outstanding science base, and I'd like to come back to that. You'll know I'm getting to the end of talking at you when I come back to why do I think it needs to be a scientific approach. First of all, though, what do I mean by a systems approach? Well, actually, I mean something very specific. I mean that we should use this thing, which is called the 2023 Science and Technology Framework, to plan our approach to becoming an AI-using science superpower. So what this is a list of 10 things, we used to call them 10 big things when we were writing it, that we need to do if we want to realize that ambition to be a science superpower in 2030. I do actually place huge stock in this S&T framework because it signals to industry, academia, government that we do actually have a long-term plan for how funding and policy are going to support the science base and what it is that we're going to do to make sure we can take that fantastic R&D discovery science and use it to drive the growth in productivity and prosperity that as a nation we need. So using the systems approach laid out in this document, we have the potential to build a government science system that's able to make the most of technologies like AI, both for our own use and for use by all of our people. So one of the things that's actually in this document is a list of 5 critical technologies. And AI is one of those 5, alongside quantum, engineering and biology, telecommunications, and semiconductors. So these 5 technologies were chosen because of their ability to underpin UK strategic advantage, or indeed threaten it, create opportunities for growth, capitalise on existing UK strengths. But underpin or threaten, that lies at the heart of many of our decisions that we need to make about how to deploy and manage these new technologies. Instinctively, I'm an AI optimist. I'm excited by what AI can do, particularly to help tackle some of our more abiding challenges, so things like around health, climate, public services, as was discussed, I thought, very richly in the first session after lunch. So much of what can happen in the UK, I am mindful, of course, of the need for both domestic action, but also that we need to we need to reach out to make proper acts of global cooperation to ensure safe and responsible use of AI. So let me return to the S&T framework and its systems features. So I would say there are 3 ways in which you can say this is a proper piece of systems thinking. So first of all, it describes a whole of government approach, reaching across existing silos. For those of you who don't live and work in the civil service, good civil servants can make things happen inside their own department, but only the most amazing civil servants can make things happen across departments. And this document is a recipe to help us, all of us, work together right across those silos that work extremely well for delivery for anything that can be done from within one department. So that's the first thing, whole of government. The second, I would say, is it focuses on full technology innovation, right from foundational research, sort of like the R&D that we're so brilliant at in our universities, in our companies, and indeed in our own government research labs, the stuff that wins Nobel Prizes. But from that, driving that into innovation, making small companies that can grow, or straight into big companies that can grow it, or indeed into products and services that we're going to use in the public sector to deliver prosperity and well-being for our fellow citizens. And then finally, it's a systems approach in the sense that it has these 10 levers, what I referred to earlier as the 10 big things, which can be applied to the S&T system as a whole. That's how it was written. But actually, we can take those 10 big things and turn them back round, actually onto any of the technologies. But I think it's very useful to say, well, if we take that list of 10 things we've got to do, let's ask, how are we getting on with AI? I'm not actually going to go through all 10 of them, you'll be pleased to hear. I'm just going to talk about 3 of those. So, but just to give you an idea, they include things like investing in R&D, financing innovative companies, what skills do we need, what infrastructure do we need, regulation, and so on. So I think if government can use these levers well, and really, really importantly, use them together, we can create a good environment for innovation to take place, for new businesses to spin out and scale, and for science and technology sectors to flourish. So what does taking a systems approach to AI look like? Let's go through 3 of these levers. So first of all, let's talk about R&D investment. How are we getting on with R&D investment for AI in the UK? So for quite a long time, we've been talking about becoming a science superpower. And the reason I'm able to stand on a stage like this and say we want to be a science superpower without my toes just curling up so much that I fall over is that we have a great, we really have a terrific science base here. We're really, really good at it. So our R&D ecosystem is built on terrific foundations. We have world-class research, world-class innovators, globally highly ranked universities, and excellent industrial and government labs. Total government investment in R&D is set to hit 20 billion each year in this coming financial year, 24-25, and that will be the largest ever increase over a spending review period. So that settlement includes, hurrah, agreement on UK association to Horizon Europe and Copernicus, and that means that UK researchers and businesses can take part in the world's largest, I think some of us might say best, programme of research cooperation. And this month's spring budget just saw £100 million investment into the Turing Institute, also hurrah. And this money is going to underpin the Institute's strategy to tackle some of the biggest issues facing society across health, sustainability, and defence and national security. So I'm just looking for the water, but it's okay, I found the water if I need the water. So R&D investment into AI, I think we're hopeful is going okay at the moment. What about access to infrastructure? So the second lever I want to talk to is infrastructure, a prerequisite for attracting talent and investment and for supporting startups. So for the UK to compete in AI, we know that we have to have adequate compute. Huge amounts of compute, along with massive volumes of data, have driven recent advances in large language models. And engaging with frontier AI companies, it's very clear that many expect scaling laws to continue to hold. So even bigger models effectively means even more capable. It follows that those who have access to the necessary compute will be further ahead in the race to train and indeed better understand their models. And that's going to be true even if new architectures emerge that are more computationally efficient. So I don't think it's really optimal if the only researchers with access to this level of resource sit in companies with a perfectly reasonable commercial interest in the models they produce. Independent researchers also have to have an important role to play in understanding and even in testing the most advanced frontier models. So I very much welcomed the announcements last year of $1.5 billion of investment in compute infrastructure across the UKRI's exascale and AI research resource programs. The AI research resource in particular will provide an immediate boost to the public sector's AI compute capacity. So the third issue I'm going to talk about, which is actually thing 10, is the idea that we need an innovative public sector. So, as I say, I thought that was covered in interesting ways in the session on this stage just after lunch. And I was delighted that was such an optimistic discussion. So AI represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to improve public sector, to improve our productivity, to improve our performance in every domain. And the ones that come to mind first are, I think, obviously health, policing, and education. So an innovative public sector is a really important thing to think about as one of the areas with greatest potential with respect to AI. And it's one that's very close to my heart, given where I sit in government. And of course, the public sector can pull on other levers in the framework, whether that's we get to set the standards, we can use public procurement as a sort of financial pull-through from innovative companies, and we can ensure appropriate investment in UK businesses. With my other hat on as Head of Profession for Government Science and Engineering, my ambition is to create a truly scientific civil service. And one of the things we have to do that is to nurture STEM skills in all sorts of civil servants. So one of the things to do is to make sure that the scientists who are already in the civil service have great careers and can see routes to leadership. Another thing to do is to make sure that all the people who don't have science degrees learn how to safely use these new technologies. And I think there's a third thing to do, which is to make porosity. That's this idea that you can come into the civil service at all sorts of levels, or indeed go out and try other things, ideally coming back again later. I think we really need to turn that into something that is really easy to do and that there are plenty of routes in. I'm encouraged also by recent developments. So the Cabinet Office recently published a great generative AI framework. It's a sort of list of do's and don'ts for people like us. Gives practical guidance for civil servants on using generative AI safely. It includes things like you should engage with data protection, privacy, and legal experts early in your journey. And on the other hand, you should never use generative AI to fully automate decision-making in high-risk or high-impact situations. Now, that will sound really obvious to all of you in this room, but remember, we're talking about tens of thousands of people who have access to this technology and won't necessarily be as interested in the pros and cons of this kind of technology as all of you are. Another great thing I think that's happening is that the Cabinet Office's team of experts are helping departments harness the potential of AI, and that team's going to double in size. So that's the team. You'll have seen stuff in the papers recently about red box. So, ministers have these amazing, great big heavy wooden red boxes that their papers get put into. This is all, you can look it up in the newspapers. They're in the process of trying to make that into a sort of a much easier to ingest transfer of information from thousands of civil servants into the head of a minister. So the incubator for AI, this thing called I.AI, will be grown to 70 experts, and it's going to be based in government, and their job is to design, build, and implement AI swiftly and at scale. I keep trying to get onto the pilot for it's not called Chatbox, which is clear. I mean, it ought to be called Chatterbox, shouldn't it? Anyway, maybe I should go into branding. I've heard terrific examples from right across government about trialling AI for analysing policy consultations. Massive piece of work that we have to do all the time. Writing briefings, developing rapid evidence reviews, and creating public service chatbots. I'm a bit worried about time. Rebecca, how am I doing for time? Hold me up. Keep going, she says. What we have here is the chance to review and reset some of the ways that the government interacts with people. I mean, I think this is a very big deal, actually. And I think, who was it who met somebody on this stage just after lunch made the great point that, as well as sort of thinking, oh, how will we do this safely? This is really a good moment to stop and think, hang on, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And what do we actually want? And I think it's very exciting times from that point of view. Perhaps most importantly, successful adoption is going to need public participation and the earning of public trust. And that means that it is up to us in the civil service to be trustworthy, which is why those obvious sounding words saying, go talk to some data and safety experts very early on in your journey are so extremely important. So one of the things I think we do need to do is monitor, as we start to use these tools, that we understand who benefits, and if harms occur, who is harmed and who is harmed and how. We need to keep a very close eye on what unintended consequences there are of these very exciting technologies. And that would, of course, include being alert to bias and discrimination baked into the models that we use. So I've gone through 3 of the 10 big things in the S&T framework. There are another 7. I'm here all week. I'm not, actually. But I do actually thoroughly recommend this document to you. It's 19 pages long. It is a plan. So when people say to you, oh, we're never going to be a science superpower, read the document and understand that there is a plan, and we'd be very, very keen to bring a lot of people along with us on that journey, because it's not something government can do on its own. Let me turn now to why am I big on the idea of a scientific approach to AI. So I talked about a systems approach, and I think it'll only work if it's underpinned by good science. And what do I mean by that? I mean rigor, I mean reproducibility, and I mean transparency. And in many venues, if I said that, people would say, well, yeah, isn't that obvious? But I think we know full well that that is not obvious in this arena, and that it's completely okay to write a paper that says, oh, I'm just not going to tell you what data I trained it on. That's not transparent. So we've all heard the vocal debates over the last 18 months. Can large language models reason for themselves? Will they get us to artificial general intelligence? Does AI pose a threat to democracy or even to humanity? And I think we really do need to double down on science, and we need to start to insist on a much more scientific approach to the generation of these models. Now, of course, those who are building these absolutely marvelous new tools will wish to market their wares. That is their right. But there is a difference between a marketing document and a scientific description of a model. If a scientific description contains claims that cannot be reproduced in the hands of other workers, then that ought to be a big issue. Nullius in verba is the motto of the Royal Society, and roughly what it means is, don't take my word for it. Go away and see if you can do the same thing that I said I can do. So we need that level of testing in order to have confidence in what is said about AI tools, so that we can build consensus and narrow uncertainty. That's the business we're in. And it's all the more important as the pace of AI development outstrips the traditional peer review process. So I think, as well as drawing on the value of the natural sciences, we also need expert perspectives from a range of disciplines, not just from computer science, but the social sciences and wider. Why do I say that? Let me share an anonymous quote from a recent report from the British Academy and the Academy of Social Sciences, which was called The Shape of Research Impact. So it says the following: engineering and medicine are the handmaidens to society. They provide solutions, but they can only be solutions if they are adopted by society. Technology isn't the solution. Technology can be used, but it can only be used by a society which is made out of individual humans. I believe this statement neatly explains the value of adopting a socio-technical approach in relation to issues like AI. So, in the run-up to November's AI Safety Summit, my department, Go Science, consulted with over 50 AI experts around the world. The work we and other departments produced for the summit contributed to what was my best ever summit. Actually, it was my first and so far my only ever summit, including the really important Bletchley Declaration on AI Safety. So since then, the UK's AI Safety Institute has set itself up to take a leading role in the global conversation around testing and evaluation for advanced AI systems. Closer to home, understanding and evaluation have been integral to how my own department, Go Science, has been exploring the use of generative AI for producing science advice. We're encouraging our own staff to trial the value of AI in work such as literature reviews, evidence syntheses, analysis and coding, and of course some of the standard tasks like minute taking. And delightfully, when we use it to produce minutes of meetings, it calls me, the chief scientific advisor, the monster sanifizer. So we clearly need to keep a human in the loop for a bit longer yet. Most recently, I've been involved in the forthcoming International Scientific Report on Advanced AI Safety. That's the report that's going to be led by Professor Joshua Bengio. So I'm the UK's representative on the expert advisory panel. Let me reassure you, that's the advisory panel of people who are so senior, we can't do any harm. So there's a whole bunch of people who do actually know what they're talking about, who will be doing the really important reviewing, because what's really important for us all is that we get out from that process a rigorous and a balanced report for the upcoming second and third AI safety summits. So I'm looking forward to that report, providing a common understanding of where there is ongoing debate or where there's more evidence needed around safety. Again, standard science approach to a societal question. So I think now it's time for me to hear from you. But before we go and do questions, I just wanted to reiterate my optimism, both in what I think we can do using a whole systems approach to making sure that we become a country and a government that is a science superpower, at least in part, because it's making fantastic use of modern AI. And although there is quite a long way to go, I don't think we should downplay the achievements we've had so far. So I look forward to working with you, the AI community, on making further progress, on heading towards a moment where the dominant narrative around AI is no longer one of lurking fear, but one where opportunity and discovery predominate. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for what was quite an optimistic, I think.
I should own up that I was born optimistic, so there may not be so much signal there.
You may be just the right person to be in the job you're doing, I suspect. So I want to take some questions on Slido, but I'm going to kick off with, I think, what you mentioned as well, the AI Safety Summit. So what were you doing there, and what were your big takeaways?
Yeah, great question. So lots of bits of government got together in order to make the AI Safety Summit the real success that it genuinely was. And in Go Science, we produced a paper on AI safety that was very firmly aimed at being a balanced paper. So it's full of, on the one hand, this, on the other hand, that. As well as attending the summit, I chaired a session that was focused on the question, what can scientists do? And actually one of the things that was really interesting in that session was, first of all, some people, no names we mentioned, who are frankly quite rude to each other on X, formerly known as Twitter, were just extremely constructive and very pleasant to each other when you get them in a room together. And the thing I really took away from that discussion about the science was a sense that the current set of architectures are probably not going to be made safe. And that instead, what we need to do is be inspired by the capabilities that we're so excited about and start again and build something that can produce that capability but can also be safety engineered. And that was a real eye-opener to me.
Okay, excellent. And I want to go to the first question here, because when we talk about where we go from here, we do hear a lot about what business wants, what the industry wants, what research wants. And here's an anonymous question. Where does the public voice fit into the UK strategy for AI?
That's a very interesting question. I think, I don't know at the moment, I'm looking of a consultation opportunity, but I think there is probably one. It would be very interesting if there were one. And of course, as I mentioned up there at the podium, we find ourselves in a situation where analysing consultations has become much easier. So we don't have to sort of live in fear of massive responses anymore. So the short answer, the honest answer to that is I don't know at the moment, but we find ourselves in this new world where public consultation comes with a lower set of costs, actually, from the point of view of doing the analysis of what people tell you. It's very exciting times.
Right, so that's polling, sort of open conversations, sort of citizens' juries?
I think there are many possibilities. The point about the way you can use these tools is that you can ask much more open-ended. It allows you to analyse answers to much more open-ended questions than straight polling does. The great thing, we used to do polling because it was very easy to analyse, answer this, give me an answer with a number between 1 and 5. Anyone who's ever read the feedback, anyone who's ever read a poll, I don't know if anyone have ever sent out a poll, that stuff comes out and you say, oh yeah, so the average is 2.7, so what? And of course, all the richness is in the free text box. You go to the free text box and, oh my God, I didn't know that was happening. I once ran a poll, oh man, that went out to all the sheep breeders in the country. And it was just absolutely we'd sort of expected 40 answers, but they were very uptight about this particular issue, so I think they all answered. And I think that's the exciting thing, is that we now have access to analysis of free text answers that can be done in ways that doesn't get tired, doesn't come with my scientific biases I had when I read it. I have to be very careful what other biases it comes from, but this is a new technology for getting understanding of what people think. Of course, we have to be very careful because we know that not everybody replies to consultations.
Of course. You talked about a once-in-a-generation chance almost to transform public sector productivity and performance. And you mentioned sort of, or really we can talk about health, policing and education as really key areas where AI can help. How can you be influential in those spaces in terms of, I'm very aware that you're not making the decisions, but you are kind of collating, feeding advice up to the people who are making decisions. So what kind of things are you feeding up in terms of advising in those areas?
So I think in particular, our stance in Go Science is a very positive one. Yes, of course it must be safe. We can't use it if we don't know it's safe, but look at what we can do. So I think that is our role. I think a role for us is to make sure, I don't know if you know, Ange, but as well as me, we have a whole network of chief scientific advisors. Every single department in government has a chief scientific advisor. And so one of the things I can do is amplify their voices when they come up with beautiful examples. In fact, didn't we hear some great examples here this afternoon about uses of AI to individualize teaching? I think the point that was made that a lot of dull work really ought to be taken away from our public servants so that they can do more of what they went into the business for.
That echoes a little bit from the panel earlier.
Absolutely.
About sort of, reducing the workload, allowing people to come in and use their time more productively. Another anonymous one, AI experts are in demand on a global level. And of course, like every kind of major developed economy, the UK is trying to get ahead, get the best people in. Do you, worry may not be quite the right word, but are you confident that either we have enough homegrown talent or we can bring in the expertise that we need to become that AI superpower that the government and you talk about?
Yes. So I think rather than struggling through my notes to get the exact details of our visa scheme, Sam, so I have come with my own real person expert.
Not AI generated. Do you have a microphone?
But the microphone didn't arrive.
Do we have a handheld microphone?
Is there a microphone for Sam?
For someone who can
Thank
help.
you. Sam, you better tell Sam. This is my colleague Sam Cannicott from DCIT, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, who actually knows the details of these sorts of things.
Yeah, although I wasn't going to touch on visas necessarily, I was going to put it in the round when we think about what we're doing to attract talent. And just a few of the things we've done recently. So last year, in the run-up to Bletchley, we launched the AI Safety Institute, which was all about building capability in government and bringing expertise into government. And when you look at the sort of people that institute has attracted, both coming from industry and academia, bringing those people together, it's doing really important work on evaluating models, making progress on safety, but is also a magnet for talent and has a really important role to play in the ecosystem. And similarly, the reason why we're making sort of other investments like in compute, where we've announced huge investments over the last year, is all about sort of boosting our capability, boosting that infrastructure, because that's how we sort of attract talent and also making sure that our universities are able to operate at the frontier. So while the visa regime is part of that, I think it's only one part. A lot of it is about how we sort of make the targeted investments and build the ecosystem in which sort of homegrown talent can thrive, and we also attract people internationally.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. I want to ask one more question, which is one that I think has a lot of attraction here on Slido, but also out among the general population, environmental impact. How do we study that aspect of it? What do we do about it, given that Sam Altman has said that, the increasing energy demands, I was reading about the electricity requirements to run some of these AI systems. They are not trivial. How does one balance that against wanting to get ahead and increase your compute, do more, do it faster?
Well, let's first of all gather all the evidence we need. So that evidence, I'm not going to give you these answers today because I don't have them in writing. But what we need to know is what percentage of our current use of electricity is in data centres. How much do we have to grow our electricity provision anyway, because we want to switch our transport and our home heating, well, all our heating, to electricity. And how does that compare with how much extra electricity we're going to end up using in data centres? I think what we'll find, watch this space, because this is something we need to go away and do, but I think what we'll find is that the growth that we need to make we all know that heating uses a huge amount of electricity, and transport is a non-trivial amount as well. I think what we'll find is that those two, let's electrify transport, let's electrify heating, are enormous, and whilst this is large, it's actually rather dwarfed by those. So
swings and roundabouts, I'm hearing.
Swings and roundabouts, and let's worry about the right things.
So we should be worrying about AI?
I'm telling you, I'm not going to worry about AI until I've seen that calculation. In 10 years' time, what percentage of our electricity, what will our total electricity usage be compared to where it is now? And how much of that growth comes from AI? How much from electrification of transport? How much from electrification of heating?
Okay.
I'm saying that it is not necessarily so that the AI bit is a large chunk of the extra electricity we need. We know we need a lot more electricity.
Okay. This is going to be the last one, sorry. One from Keith. About bias. How much R&D work is being undertaken to make bias visible to end users? How much of kind of what we hear about so much is sort of algorithmic discrimination and so on is on your radar in terms of an issue? as we embed more of these systems in our everyday lives and in government?
Hugely on my radar, always has been. I mean, 10 years ago, when we were writing the Royal Society's report on machine learning, it was a massive issue. When we ran a series of meetings over there called, I can't remember if they were called AI and Me or Me and AI. But anyway, we had fantastic talks about things you can and cannot do to fix bias. We live in a very biased society, and that is reflected in the data upon which our models are trained. I think it is a big issue for me. I cannot give you chapter and verse on how much R&D is going into managing bias. Actually, I think that'd be a good question to ask the Alan Turing Institute, who actually, after all, are our nation's AI and Data Research Institute. My understanding is that it will always be there with us, and we will therefore need to find ways to search for it, and that in basically codifying it into AI models can, in fact, make it more visible. I mean, think about your own biases. I mean, we are all riddled with bias, much of which we don't see. So at least if you can see it, you can hope to do something about it.
That almost sounds as if it was an answer to my question, really. Not
Can
really
I
a
go
question,
now?
but no, you're not allowed to go yet, Angela. But because I want you to think about, what's your key message? If you want this audience here online to take away, given we're all, we've got industry here, researchers, interested kind of NGOs, what would be your message to them?
I would say go out and be hopeful. I mean, this is an exciting time, really an exciting time. I mean, I think for me, the thing that's most exciting, actually, is that, most of my working life has been about, has been the so-called 80-20 split. You spend 80% of your time cleaning up the data and then analysing it. Sometimes only takes an afternoon. You spend weeks and weeks and weeks. The idea that some of that is going to be rebalanced so that we have access to, let's not call it data, let's call it information about how we live our lives, which means, therefore, we can do a better job of helping people to live the lives they want to live. So I think that's incredibly exciting, but of course must be done with care.
That's brilliant, and that's a really good way to end. And before we thank you for being here, I just want to reflect on this stage that I've had the privilege of hosting today, where we started with an opening provocation with a deepfake drag queen. For those of you who were here, you won't forget it. And if you haven't seen it, please go and check it on the videos afterwards. And that was about reclaiming AI for artistic purposes. Including deep fakes. It doesn't all have to be bad news. We had a panel on large language models, and we heard in that almost an ode to the mundane, which ties in very well with your idea about public sector productivity. Actually, by doing some of that, getting AI to do some of that mundane work, we can really free people up to do the creative stuff. But we also need the humans in the loop, because humans know you can't melt an egg. And in the session on data and labour, we heard about the underside of the AI labour industry, including from a Kenyan worker who was being paid less than $2 an hour to detoxify ChatGPT. And it was interesting because it made me think that when we do think about AI workers, I can't even say it, AI workers, we often think about the Google developers on six-figure salaries, and that's not who all AI workers are. But we've also ended here with an optimistic note, with Dame Anjana seeing AI as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. I'm inclined to agree with you on that, to improve the way we run everything from sort of government, society, research, and change the way that government interacts with society. Let us put our hands together for our keynote speaker, Professor Dame Anjana McLean.